So, what do you think we can do here, rather than Schick-Shadel, or even after Schick-Shadel? What does this family need to do? What's really going to help them? They can't sit down and talk. They can't communicate. They've spent 17 years not talking. You think all of a sudden they're going to have a revelation and sit down and be able to communicate? If you believe that, it's way too simplistic. No problems will ever be solved. These people don't have the skills. You know, having a family and being in a relationship requires skill. How are they going to learn the skills? Okay, so what kind of program should John go to rather than Schick-Shadel? Alcoholics Anonymous is not enough. That's part of the solution, but not the entire solution. Okay, John needs to go to some type of probably an outpatient program where he maybe goes for a month every day after work, and he spends 4 or 5 hours. They have to detox him probably to some level, and then they do individual counseling and therapy. AA is part of that process. But the key process that needs to occur is family therapy. He needs to come down off the chair, and he needs to stand in many ways in his life next to his wife. They need to have an egalitarian relationship. Do you remember what egalitarian means? Equal. Equal. They need to see if there's anything really left in that relationship. And I think you need to be realistic about that. Just because he's sober and they're in therapy doesn't really mean that these two people are going to stay together forever. If they really don't love each other, if they really don't like each other, you know, it's unfair. And in our society, we can do this in a healthy way if they eventually decide to split. Therapy doesn't always mean that you're going to stay together forever. What it does mean, though, is these two people can develop a healthy relationship. And that's critical. It may kindle that relationship that they had in the past, which is good. It may really bring them to a realization that even though they now care for each other in a much better way than they had previously, that maybe they don't want to live together anymore. The whole family is brought in to the therapy process. The model child, she really has to do some work on being a normal kid. She takes a class, credit, no credit. You know, these people, they have to get A's. They're obsessed. Credit, no credit. You're not taking care of anybody else in the family anymore. We really work on having her pursue some interests on her own thing. She needs to develop her own self-esteem through some of her own activities. Her responsibility should not be taking care of him or her or her or her, cleaning the house every Saturday. That should not be her job. If that's what you did as a child, that's not healthy. That's not your role. So make sure your own children, every child should have chores. Everybody has responsibilities. But the whole load should not rest on her shoulders. What do we do with Claire? What are we going to do with Claire? Okay, I think somehow you've got to bring her in without totally alienating her. Give her some support for things that she does, positive things. You're going to give her a party if she gets a C, for Pete's sake. You're going to be thrilled if she goes to school. You're going to be thrilled if the cops aren't calling every night. You can't compare your children. Each one of your children is going to be different. They can't be treated exactly the same way. Okay? We're not going to give her $20 for every A she brings home anymore. In fact, we might give her $20 for every credit she brings home. But I'll tell you what, we're going to reward her for anything that she can do positive. And by doing that, now you create an atmosphere where she can really become a useful member of the family as well as the society. What are we going to do with Elizabeth? Oh yeah, we're going to make her an athlete. You've got to go now be an athlete. How realistic is that? I don't think you can put people in things. I think parents make a mistake forcing people to do things, activities like that. I think if she has a skill, if she has an activity she likes, that's fine. But what are we going to do at home with her? She's a computer junkie. What are we going to do? What are we going to ask her? You're going to move her computer into the family room. Okay? She's going to have to come in and have some interaction with you if she wants to use her computer. She's going to teach the family something. Even if what she teaches them are some kind of video games or computer games or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Because she's still, see, what can happen to the lost child is that the rest of the family can start improving and becoming healthier. She's still the lost child. And she's still vulnerable. So then something bad still happens to her, and this family has worked so hard. And some of you know this. Some of you have been there. Some families work so hard, and then there's one child that just sort of gets left out. And that's the child. It'll be the lost child because they're the least communicative. She communicates by being a rebel. She'll always have an opinion. You never have to worry about her saying anything. Okay? This is the child you have to worry about, so you really need to bring that child into the family somehow without making her life completely miserable. Change is slow. Change is slow, but you got to keep chipping away at it. Okay? Give these guys a hand. All right, there are 3 rules. There are 3 rules that sick families always enforce. And this is one way that you can begin to determine at what level your family was healthy or unhealthy. The first rule is there's a no-talk rule. A no-talk rule. And the no-talk rule says in your family, what goes on in this family stays in this family. I never want to hear about you going out and talking to your friends about what goes on in this family. You know, no rumors. That's what family is for. Those are the people that keep pounding the family thing as being the only types of relationships that you should have. Well, that's pretty sad. That's pretty sad because if you're not sending your children out with that support and that ability to develop intimate relationships with their little friends, they'll never be able to develop intimate relationships with their little friends. And from the time you're 5 and 6 and 7 years old, you should be developing the beginnings of intimate relationships. You talk to your little friends about thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and needs, things that are happening, how you feel, and you should be encouraging your little kids to do that. But fear is what drives the no-talk rule. Fear that you will say something about this dysfunctional family. Because, you know, everybody in the family knows there's something not really very healthy. They can't always put their finger on it. But even little kids know when things aren't healthy and people aren't really happy. And so that family, those parents, do not want those children going out and talking about anything. So you should be encouraging your children to go out, develop good friends. You know, there's some things, maybe financial things. If your family's having a financial problem, you may want to tell your children, you know, this is really our family business, and, you know, you don't need to be telling everybody that we're going bankrupt or whatever. I mean, there's some things that you maybe want to tell your kids, but otherwise, sort of give them a free rein. Because they'll wonder why you've told them that. They'll begin to wonder what's so bad. And that shame starts to develop, and that's a very unhealthy process. We have the no trust rule. And the no trust rule says the only people in the world that you can trust are people in your family. So it's a little bit like the no talk rule. The only people you can talk to are the people in your family. And the only people you can ever trust are the people in your family. Well, that's also very sad. We really should be teaching our children to trust someone until that person proves to be untrustworthy. Now, we obviously have to teach our children how to be safe, particularly nowadays. There's so many sort of things happening. But you certainly want your children to go out and trust their friends until they really find that they can't trust them. You know, I don't have a very big family. There are really only 3 of us in the family. What if I could only trust 3 people in the whole world? I mean, how sad is that? So, you live a very sheltered life, and all you do is you say, oh, my family is the most important thing. I never spend any time with anybody but my family. That's not healthy. Branch out, develop new relationships, trust people. That's what your family should be encouraging. And the last rule is the no feelings rule. And in the no feelings rule, what happens in your family is you never talk about feelings. There are never any discussions or questions about how you feel. How you feel. This is very important. If you don't talk with your children about feelings, they don't develop those intimacy skills that we talked about. Your little kid falls down, little boy, he falls down, he scuffs his knee and he's crying. He's about 4 years old, and the dad says, big boys don't cry. I mean, what a terrible message. Some little kid comes home from school, and they've had a PE class where they pick teams. You know, I hate that. You know, 2 captains stand up there and they pick teams, and this child is picked last. Some of you remember how that felt, being picked last. And you're sad. And you go home, and somebody actually asks you how your day was, which is unique in a dysfunctional family as it is, and you say, well, I got picked last. And the only message you get is, get over it, you're tough, you're a big boy, you're a big girl. Instead of saying, well, how does that make you feel? You're just told to get over it. So it reinforces a lifetime of not really talking about your feelings. So if you want to have a healthy family, guess what? You talk about feelings, teach your children to trust people until people prove themselves to be untrustworthy, and talking, you encourage intimacy, you encourage your children to go out and make little friends and talk to their friends, and you don't give them all those rules. This is not brain surgery. It's not that hard to do those 3 things. And that's going to be the key to helping you prevent dysfunctional families and in really increasing the health of families that maybe aren't totally dysfunctional, but, you know, really don't do those 3 things very well. Any questions? Okay, we're done.